Some stories resonate long after the headlines fade, etched into the collective memory by their sheer brutality and the profound human drama they encapsulate. The case of Jodi Arias is one such narrative, a saga that unfolded with the intensity of a Greek tragedy, laying bare the darkest corners of human emotion, love, obsession, jealousy, and ultimately, murder. It's a story that gripped a nation, spawning countless debates and an enduring fascination with the woman at its center. This is not merely a recounting of facts, but an exploration of the complex web of relationships and psychological forces that culminated in a shocking crime. Before the shadow of a brutal crime fell upon him, Travis Alexander was a vibrant, ambitious individual. Born into a Mormon family, he was a motivational speaker, a salesman, and a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Friends and family described him as charismatic, energetic, and deeply spiritual, someone who drew people to him with his infectious personality and unwavering faith. He had a passion for photography and a promising future, unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. His life, full of promise, would tragically be cut short. Jodi and Arias came from Salinas, California, a young woman described by some as artistic and free-spirited, though others would later paint a very different picture. Her early life was marked by a somewhat turbulent family dynamic. She worked various jobs, including a waitress and a direct sales associate, and pursued interests in photography. Before meeting Travis Alexander, her life seemed unremarkable to the public eye. No one could have predicted the notoriety that awaited her, or the role she would play in one of the most sensational murder trials of the 21st century. Her journey from obscurity to infamy is a stark one. Their paths crossed in September 2006 at a conference in Las Vegas, a gathering for prepaid legal services, a company both Travis and Jodi worked for. Travis, a charismatic speaker, instantly caught Jodi's attention. Though not a member of his church, Jodi soon converted to Mormonism, seemingly drawn by Travis and his faith. Their connection was immediate and intense, fueled by a mutual attraction and a shared professional environment. What began as a seemingly innocent encounter would soon evolve into a relationship of profound complexity, setting the stage for future tragedy. The initial sparks were undeniable. Their romance quickly escalated into a whirlwind of passion. They often spoke for hours on the phone and traveled frequently to see each other, maintaining a long-distance relationship between Arizona and California. Friends observed an undeniable chemistry, but also an intensity that bordered on overwhelming. Travis, in particular, was deeply enamored, sharing intimate details of their relationship with close friends. This initial period was characterized by deep emotional attachment and a physical bond, yet beneath the surface, subtle tensions began to emerge, laying the groundwork for a much darker future. The connection was electric, almost consuming. As their relationship deepened, a darker side of Jodi Arias began to surface. Friends of Travis Alexander reported instances of jealousy and possessiveness from Arias. She would allegedly check his phone, monitor his activities, and exhibit controlling behaviors that made Travis increasingly uncomfortable. These red flags, initially dismissed as signs of intense love, grew more pronounced, causing friction and arguments. Travis, a man who valued his independence and social connections, found himself increasingly constrained. The passion that once defined their bond slowly began to curdle into something more toxic and suffocating. The honeymoon phase was over. By mid-2007, the strain became too much. Travis Alexander decided to end the relationship, citing Jodi's possessiveness and their differing desires for the future. He wanted to pursue other relationships and continue his spiritual path, while Jodi struggled to accept the breakup. Despite Travis's attempts to move on, Arias frequently reappeared in his life, leading to an on-again, off-again dynamic that confused friends and tormented Travis. He loved her, yet couldn't live with her. This emotional roller coaster exacerbated the underlying tensions, creating a volatile situation that seemed destined for further conflict. The breakup was not clean. In the months following their initial split, Travis Alexander genuinely attempted to forge a new life. He dated other women and immersed himself further in his career and church community. He spoke to friends about his desire to find a compatible partner and settle down, but Jodi Arias remained a persistent, unsettling presence. She would call him incessantly, show up unannounced, and monitor his online activities. Despite his efforts to create boundaries, Arias refused to fade into the background, demonstrating an alarming inability to accept their separation. Travis's hopes for a fresh start were continuously undermined. He felt trapped. Jodi Arias's inability to let go escalated into what many described as an obsession. She admitted to stalking Travis, tracking his whereabouts, and even accessing his emails and social media accounts. Her behavior became increasingly erratic and disturbing, a stark contrast to the charming persona she initially presented. Friends and family of Travis grew concerned for his safety, warning him about the potential danger. However, Travis, perhaps still emotionally entangled, struggled to completely sever ties. This deepening obsession would prove to be a critical turning point, leading to a tragic and unavoidable confrontation. The situation grew darker with each passing day. In late May 2008, Jodi Arias made a fateful trip from California to Mesa, Arizona, where Travis Alexander lived. Her stated reason was to visit friends and attend a company event, but secretly, she drove through the night, arriving at Travis's home. Travis was preparing for a trip to Cancun with another woman, a fact that may have fueled Arias's rage. The precise details of what transpired during her visit would become a central point of contention in the later trial, but it was clear this encounter was far from a casual reunion. This journey marked the beginning of the end. A quiet drive, a devastating destination. On June 4, 2008, Travis Alexander was scheduled to travel to Cancun. He failed to appear for his flight. What friends and family did not yet know was that 2 days prior, on June 2, Alexander had been brutally murdered in his Mesa, Arizona home. The last known images of Travis alive, taken on his own camera, showed him with Jodi Arias, both in intimate and playful poses. These photographs would later become crucial, chilling evidence, documenting moments before the unspeakable act. The playful scene belied the horror that was about to unfold, a stark contrast between life and imminent death. The camera captured more than just memories. The scene within Travis Alexander's home was horrific. He had been stabbed multiple times, specifically 27 times, shot in the head, and his throat was slit from ear to ear. The brutality of the attack shocked seasoned investigators. Evidence suggested a struggle, a desperate fight for survival against a relentless assailant. The sheer violence spoke volumes, indicating not just a murder, but a crime fueled by intense emotion and rage. This was no simple act of violence, but a sustained, frenzied assault. The quiet suburban home had become a stage for unspeakable terror, a stark contrast to its tranquil exterior. Several days passed without word from Travis. Concerned friends and colleagues, including his cousin and business associates, went to his Mesa home on June 4. They found the door unlocked and, after entering, discovered Travis Alexander's lifeless body in his shower. The shock and horror of the discovery were profound, instantly turning concern into unspeakable grief and terror. They immediately called 911, setting in motion a full-scale murder investigation that would soon draw national attention. The silence of the house was broken by screams of disbelief and the urgent sounds of emergency services. A routine wellness check turned into a nightmare. Mesa police swiftly secured the crime scene. Detectives began processing the grim evidence, meticulously documenting every detail. They quickly identified the victim as Travis Alexander. The brutality of the murder indicated a highly personal crime, leading investigators to focus on those closest to Alexander. They found multiple weapons used, blood evidence, and a chaotic scene, suggesting a desperate struggle. The initial hours of the investigation were critical, laying the groundwork for what would become a complex and high-profile case. Every piece of evidence was crucial, every detail a potential clue. The puzzle began to form. When initially questioned by detectives, Jodi Arias provided an elaborate alibi. She claimed she was hundreds of miles away in California at the time of Travis Alexander's murder, having driven there from Utah. She asserted she had not seen Travis since April and had no involvement in his death. Her demeanor during these interviews was initially calm and cooperative, a stark contrast to the escalating suspicion investigators felt. This initial alibi was designed to deflect suspicion, but it would soon crumble under the weight of forensic evidence and her own inconsistent statements. The story was too perfect, too rehearsed. Despite Arias's denials, investigators quickly focused their attention on her. Her history of obsessive behavior towards Travis, coupled with the violent and personal nature of the crime, made her a prime suspect. Friends of Travis corroborated the pattern of harassment and jealousy. The timeline provided by Arias also began to unravel under scrutiny, revealing inconsistencies that further heightened suspicion. It became clear that her story was not adding up, and the initial calm facade she presented to police slowly began to crack, hinting at the turmoil beneath. All signs pointed to a disturbed connection. The pieces were falling into place, but not in her favor. One of the most damning pieces of evidence emerged from Travis Alexander's own digital camera. Recovered from his washing machine, the camera contained photographs taken on the day of the murder. These images showed Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander in a sequence of intimate poses, some playful, others revealing an escalating tension. Crucially, a final, chilling photograph, taken just moments before the estimated time of death, captured Travis in the shower, presumably after the attack. The metadata confirmed the time and date, directly contradicting Arias's alibi and placing her squarely at the scene of the crime. The camera was a silent witness. Beyond the damning photographs, forensic analysis cemented Jodi Arias's presence at the crime scene. Her DNA was found commingled with Travis Alexander's blood at various locations throughout the house, including on a bloody palm print. This undeniable scientific evidence dismantled her claims of absence and any theory of an unknown assailant. The DNA evidence, combined with the digital timeline, formed an unbreakable chain, linking Arias directly to the brutal murder. It was the scientific nail in the coffin, confirming what the photographs had hinted at. Science spoke louder than any denial. There was no escape from the truth. Faced with overwhelming evidence, including the digital photos and DNA, authorities moved to arrest Jodi Arias. On July 15, 2008, she was taken into custody in California and subsequently extradited to Arizona to face charges for the murder of Travis Alexander. Her arrest garnered significant media attention, setting the stage for what would become one of the most publicized murder trials in recent memory. From her small hometown, Arias was thrust into the national spotlight, her name soon synonymous with a shocking crime. The legal process had begun its inexorable march forward. The journey to justice was a long one. The period leading up to the trial was marked by an intense media frenzy. The salacious details of the case, the former lovers, the graphic photos, the brutal nature of the crime, captured public imagination. Court TV and other news outlets provided constant updates, dissecting every new development. Public opinion rapidly solidified, with many convinced of Arias's guilt even before the trial began. This widespread attention created an atmosphere ripe for sensationalism, making it challenging to separate fact from speculation. The court of public opinion was already rendering its judgment, adding pressure to the legal proceedings. The world watched, captivated. The trial of Jodi Arias for the murder of Travis Alexander officially began in January 2013, 4.5 years after the crime. The prosecution, led by Deputy County Attorney Juan Martinez, painted a picture of premeditated murder, driven by Arias's jealousy and rage after Alexander decided to end their relationship for good. In his opening statements, Martinez detailed the horrific nature of the injuries and the overwhelming forensic evidence, leaving no doubt that Arias was the sole perpetrator. The courtroom was packed, the cameras rolling, ready to broadcast every twist and turn to a captivated audience. The long-awaited legal battle had commenced. The prosecution meticulously presented its case, using a combination of forensic evidence, digital records, and witness testimony. They highlighted the 27 stab wounds, the gunshot to the head, and the slit throat as evidence of Alexander's brutal demise, arguing that the overkill demonstrated premeditation and a desire to silence Alexander permanently. They detailed Arias's inconsistent alibis, the crucial photographs from Alexander's camera, and the presence of her DNA at the scene. Each piece of evidence built a compelling narrative of a jealous ex-girlfriend who, unable to let go, resorted to extreme violence. The evidence was staggering, pointing relentlessly towards Arias. Deputy County Attorney Juan Martinez became a prominent figure in the trial, known for his aggressive and often theatrical cross-examination style. He relentlessly pursued inconsistencies in Arias's story, famously challenging her on every detail. Martinez's direct and often confrontational approach captivated viewers, earning him both praise and criticism. He aimed to dismantle Arias's credibility and paint her as a cold-blooded killer. His performance in the courtroom was a significant factor in shaping public perception of the case and, ultimately, influenced the jury's understanding of the evidence. He was a force to be reckoned with, unyielding in his pursuit of conviction. The defense, led by attorneys Jennifer Wilmot and Kirk Nurmi, presented a counter-narrative that Jodi Arias killed Travis Alexander in self-defense. They argued that Alexander was an abusive and manipulative individual, physically and emotionally, and that Arias acted out of fear for her life during an altercation. This strategy required Arias to take the stand herself to articulate her version of events. It was a high-risk gamble, relying heavily on the jury's acceptance of her claims against the backdrop of overwhelming physical evidence. The defense aimed to shift the blame, portraying Alexander as the aggressor. A desperate plea for understanding. Jodi Arias's testimony was perhaps the most anticipated and dramatic part of the trial. She spent 18 days on the witness stand, offering a convoluted and often contradictory account of her relationship with Travis Alexander and the events of June 2, 2008. She initially denied killing him, then blamed masked intruders, before finally admitting to the act but claiming self-defense. Her tearful and emotional testimony was met with skepticism by many, especially as Martinez picked apart her story. This lengthy cross-examination became a central spectacle, showcasing Arias's shifting narratives and emotional swings. The world watched her every word. During her testimony, Jodi Arias accused Travis Alexander of physical and emotional abuse, including allegations of sexual violence. She described a relationship marked by control, jealousy, and manipulation on Alexander's part, presenting herself as a victim who snapped under extreme duress. These claims were vehemently denied by Alexander's friends and family, who testified to his character and devotion. The defense's strategy hinged on convincing the jury of Alexander's abusive nature, thereby legitimizing Arias's self-defense claim. It was a polarizing narrative, forcing the jury to weigh conflicting accounts of the deceased's character. The court became a battleground of reputations. Juan Martinez's cross-examination of Jodi Arias became legendary for its intensity and duration. He systematically dismantled her shifting stories, highlighting inconsistencies and pressing her on graphic details of the murder. Martinez confronted Arias with her own statements, the digital photographs, and the forensic evidence, leaving little room for doubt about her presence and actions. His relentless questioning often reduced Arias to tears or frustration, creating dramatic moments that were widely broadcast. This adversarial exchange was central to the prosecution's effort to expose Arias's deception and prove premeditated murder. It was a masterclass in aggressive legal strategy, captivating the public. Throughout the trial, extremely graphic evidence was presented to the jury, including crime scene photographs of Travis Alexander's body and detailed testimony from the medical examiner. The images were so disturbing that the judge frequently warned the public gallery, and many struggled to view them. These visuals served to underscore the brutal nature of the murder and counter Arias's claims of self-defense, demonstrating the sheer violence used. While difficult to witness, this evidence was crucial for the prosecution to establish the elements of first-degree murder. The stark reality of the crime left an indelible mark on all who saw it. No detail was spared. Beyond Arias and Martinez, the trial featured a host of other witnesses whose testimonies contributed to the complex narrative. Friends and family of Travis Alexander described him as loving and dedicated, refuting the defense's claims of abuse. Conversely, some of Arias's acquaintances offered insights into her troubled past and manipulative tendencies. Expert witnesses, including forensic pathologists and psychological profilers, provided technical analysis and interpretations. Each witness offered a piece of the puzzle, presenting often contradictory perspectives that the jury had to reconcile. The collective voice painted a multifaceted, often disturbing, picture. Everyone had a story to tell. After months of testimony, both the prosecution and defense delivered their closing arguments. Juan Martinez passionately reiterated the overwhelming evidence of premeditated murder, emphasizing Arias's deception and the brutality of the crime. He urged the jury to deliver justice for Travis Alexander. The defense, in turn, stressed the self-defense narrative, portraying Arias as a victim of abuse who acted out of fear. They asked the jury to consider the emotional toll and circumstances surrounding the altercation. These final pleas were crucial, summarizing complex arguments and attempting to sway the jury to their respective conclusions. The fate of Arias hung in the balance. The jury began its deliberation on May 3, 2013, faced with the immense task of sifting through months of testimony, countless pieces of evidence, and two starkly contrasting narratives. The eyes of a captivated nation were on them, waiting for a verdict in a case that had dominated headlines for years. The gravity of their decision, whether to find Arias guilty of first-degree murder, a lesser charge, or acquit her, was palpable. They spent days locked away, carefully considering the evidence, knowing their conclusion would bring either closure or further controversy to this high-profile case. The tension was immense as the clock ticked. On May 8, 2013, after just over 15 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Jodi Arias was found guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Travis Alexander. The announcement sent a ripple through the courtroom and across the nation, confirming what many had long suspected. Arias herself showed little outward emotion, but the reaction from Alexander's family was one of palpable relief and tears. The guilty verdict marked a significant milestone in the long legal battle, validating the prosecution's case of premeditation and rejecting the defense's self-defense claims. A resounding affirmation of justice, but the legal journey was not yet over. Following the guilty verdict, the trial entered the penalty phase, where the jury would decide if Jodi Arias should receive life imprisonment or the death penalty. The prosecution sought to establish aggravating factors, primarily the especially cruel, heinous, or depraved nature of the murder. They presented evidence to emphasize the torture and suffering Alexander endured. Arias's defense team, conversely, aimed to highlight mitigating factors, such as her troubled upbringing and mental health issues, arguing against the imposition of capital punishment. This phase shifted the focus from guilt to punishment, a deeply moral and emotional decision for the jury. The stakes were higher than ever. The prosecution's case for aggravating factors centered on the brutal details of Travis Alexander's murder. Juan Martinez highlighted the multiple stab wounds, the gunshot, and the slit throat as evidence of Alexander's suffering and the extreme violence inflicted. He argued that Arias's actions demonstrated a callous disregard for human life and a depraved state of mind, pushing for the death penalty. The state presented expert witnesses who testified to the agonizing pain Alexander would have experienced, reinforcing the heinous nature of the crime. These arguments were designed to shock the conscience and persuade the jury towards the ultimate punishment. The horror was laid bare again. The defense presented its case for mitigating factors, hoping to spare Jodi Arias the death penalty. They introduced evidence of her difficult childhood, including allegations of parental abuse and neglect, and presented psychological evaluations suggesting potential mental health issues. Arias herself addressed the jury, expressing remorse, though many found her sincerity questionable. The defense argued that these factors diminished her culpability and should be considered when determining her sentence. The aim was to evoke empathy and suggest that a life sentence, rather than execution, was the appropriate punishment. It was a plea for mercy in the face of brutal facts. After deliberating on the penalty phase, the first jury could not reach a unanimous decision on whether to impose the death penalty. In Arizona, a unanimous vote is required for capital punishment. This deadlock meant that a new jury would have to be impaneled solely for the penalty phase. The result was a major blow to the prosecution and a source of deep frustration for Travis Alexander's family, who had hoped for a swift and final resolution. The case, already long and arduous, was now destined to drag on even further, prolonging the emotional agony for everyone involved. Justice remained elusive, its path fraught with delays. In September 2014, more than a year after the initial guilty verdict, a second jury was selected to decide Jodi Arias' sentence. This new jury faced the daunting task of immersing themselves in the details of the case, which had already been exhaustively covered by media, without being swayed by prior public opinion. Both sides once again presented their arguments for aggravating and mitigating factors, hoping to sway the new panel to a definitive decision. The selection process was meticulous, aiming to find impartial individuals capable of making such a grave choice. The legal saga continued, relentless and unyielding. Another chapter in this endless trial. Despite the efforts of both prosecution and defense, and the exhaustive presentation of evidence, the second jury also failed to reach a unanimous verdict on the death penalty in March 2015. This second deadlock meant that, by Arizona law, the death penalty was no longer an option. The decision on Arias' sentence would now fall to the presiding judge, Judge Sherry Stevens. It was a moment of profound disappointment for Alexander's family and for many who had followed the case, signaling an end to the possibility of capital punishment. The drawn-out process had resulted in an outcome few anticipated. The court's hands were now tied. On April 13, 2015, Judge Sherry Stevens handed down Jodi Arias' sentence, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This decision was mandated by Arizona law following the two deadlocked juries in the penalty phase. Arias addressed the court, maintaining her innocence and claiming she was misunderstood, a statement that elicited strong reactions from Alexander's family. The judge's decision brought a formal end to the tumultuous legal proceedings, cementing Arias' fate in the Arizona prison system. It was a conclusion that, while final, left a lingering sense of unease and debate for many. Justice, delivered but still questioned. The resolution of the Jodi Arias case elicited a wide range of public reactions. Many expressed satisfaction that she would spend the rest of her life behind bars, believing justice had been served. Others were disappointed that the death penalty was not imposed, feeling it was the only fitting punishment for such a heinous crime. The case sparked widespread debate about the justice system, the nature of abuse, and the media's role in high-profile trials. Social media buzzed with opinions, and true crime forums continue to dissect every aspect. The public's fascination endured, a testament to the emotional power of the story. A nation divided in its judgment. For the families of Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias, the legal conclusion offered little true closure. Alexander's loved ones continued to mourn his brutal loss, forever scarred by the violence and the agonizing public trial. They spoke of the enduring pain and the inability to fully move on. Arias' family, too, faced scrutiny and a lifetime grappling with their daughter's actions and notoriety. The human cost of such a crime extends far beyond the courtroom, leaving behind a trail of grief, anger, and unanswered questions for all involved. No verdict can truly heal such wounds. The shadows of tragedy linger. Jodi Arias remains incarcerated at the Arizona State Prison Complex, Perryville, where she will spend the rest of her natural life. Reports from within prison describe her as maintaining a relatively quiet existence, though she has occasionally attempted to appeal her conviction and even sought to profit from her story. Her presence behind bars serves as a constant reminder of the brutal crime that defined her. The complex psychological profile of Arias continues to fascinate and confound, leaving many to wonder about the true depths of her motives and sanity. Her story ends not in freedom, but in perpetual confinement. A life sentence, literally. The Jodi Arias case continues to captivate and provoke discussion years after its conclusion. It stands as a chilling example of obsessive love turned deadly, a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked emotion and manipulation. The trial redefined how high-profile cases are consumed by the public, amplified by the immediacy of social media. Its complex layers, the sensationalism, the legal intricacies, the psychological drama, ensure its place in the annals of true crime history. The names Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander are inextricably linked, forever symbols of a tragedy that continues to be dissected, debated, and remembered. A haunting narrative that persists.